Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Tonight we shall discuss a section of Krishna Leela involving the Brahmanas and their wives. These Brahmanas and their wives were situated near Mathura. And so the background to this pastime is not the same or in chronological order with the Varnahastra Leela, Krishna stealing the clothes of the young girls. Although in Bhagavatam, the pastime involving the yogic Brahmanas and their wives comes right after the Varnahastra Leela, the clothes-stealing Leela. The clothes-stealing Leela took place in the winter because that's the time when you make offerings to Katyayani. The young girls do that to get a nice husband. And the pastime with the Brahmanas and their wives took place in the summer. So why are they back to back in Srimad Bhagavatam? Maybe you never wondered. Because both Leelas involve extraordinary mercy. The mercy shown by Krishna taking the clothes of the young gopis in that way, fulfilling their desire to have Krishna as their husband, and then Krishna blessing the wives of the Brahmanas with his presence. So Krishna, being all-knowing, and by the arrangement of his Leela Shakti, his pastime energy, he knew that he was going to give out such mercy to the wives of the Brahmanas. So therefore, he arranged that his cow herding with the cowherd boys would venture far from where he lived, almost to Mathura. Way out of his way, you would say. And he also arranged that the cowherd boys didn't bring any lunch. And he also arranged that they would all be wandering in the part of the forest where there were no fruit trees. So it's all a setup to give the wives of the Brahmanas special mercy. And to demonstrate the foolishness of the husbands of these wives, who were super ritualistic, super Vedic about everything except the conclusion of the Vedas. So wandering through the forest, the cowherd boys thought, Krishna must be hungry. But the way they presented it was as if it was their own personal desire, their own personal hunger. They called out, Rama, Rama, Mahabaho, Krishna Dushta Nibahana. Oh, mighty arm Ram. They called Balaram first. Why? Because they knew Krishna would like that. Krishna would like that they're respecting the etiquette by calling the older brother first. Even though Balaram's just a few weeks older than Krishna. And of course, Krishna is the avatari, the source of all expansions and incarnations. But the cowherd boys they knew Krishna would be enlivened. If we first address Balaram, mighty arm Balaram, Rama, Rama. Calling Balaram Rama is more intimate than calling him Sankarshan. Rama means one who, in the case of Balaram, one who gives pleasure to Krishna. When you call Krishna Rama, which also happens, it means one who gives pleasure to his dearly beloved. So they call out, Rama, Krishna, you've killed so many demons. Surely you can kill this demon of hunger. Pure devotional service, no selfishness whatsoever. They're thinking if we say we're hungry, Krishna will eat, and we're only concerned with Krishna's well-being. That is the nature of the entirety of Vrindavan, Krishna's well-being. No one has any other thought. This is a little hard for us to understand because to whatever degree, we're thinking of our own well-being. But the Brajbasis know that Krishna is the self of the self in terms of love. They don't meditate on Krishna's majestic glories. When they know that he's the self of the self, it means he's their dearly beloved, more dear to them than their own self. But they're not affected by Aishvarya, Krishna's opulences and majesty, as the Vaikuntha-ites are. So, Krishna gives them some instruction. After first pointing out how glorious are the trees in the forest. Ahoy Sham Varam Janma Sarvapran Upajivanam. Just think about how the trees are such a superior birth. That's surprising to us because we're so accustomed to thinking of trees as very unfortunate living entities in bodies that are very unfortunate. But Krishna wants to use the trees in Braj as an example of how one gives everything for the pleasure of others. Therefore he calls it Varam Janma, superior birth, because they're giving everything they have, the trees. They're giving their wood, they're giving their leaves, they're giving their fruits, they're giving their, even when they're burned and become ashes, they're giving ashes, they're giving sap. On and on. They're giving shade in the summer. And their wood gives warmth in the winter. So in this way, Krishna is pointing out the behavior of an excellent human being who gives everything for the supreme welfare work. And he explains, Pranar Artar Jya Vacha. You should give your life energies for Krishna's service. Whatever wealth you have is all meant for Krishna's pleasure. Pranar Artar Diya. Give your intelligence. Always strategize and make plans how to benefit others with the supreme welfare work. Vacha. Give your words. Always glorify Krishna. Ideally, do all four, but at least do one of those four. So Krishna, while wandering through the forest with the cowherd boys, is using the trees as an example. And so now the cowherd boys want Krishna to eat. But where is the food going to come from? They didn't bring any with them by Krishna's arrangement. There are no fruits coming from the trees around them by Krishna's arrangement. So what to do? Krishna responds to their call by telling them nearby are some brahmanas performing a yajna. These brahmanas are super paka in terms of all the technicalities of pious activities and performing yajnas for going to the higher planets. Their goal is swarga. Their goal is not love of Krishna. So Krishna warned the cowherd boys that these brahmanas are so absorbed in all the minute details of the Vedas, the flowery words of the Vedas, but they have no idea of the conclusion of the Vedas. As Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita, Vedaishta sarvar ahameva veja. By all the Vedas, it is I who am to be known. So these brahmanas knew everything except the conclusion of the Vedas. They were lost in all kinds of technicalities, yogic technicalities, all for the sake of getting comfort in their next life, getting a better destination in their next life. This is real materialism, let me tell you. To call someone today a materialist is actually a great compliment, because they have no idea how to be happy in this life or the next. But a real materialist, like these brahmanas, understands how to make a peaceful life now and have a better life in the heavenly planets in the future. That's a real materialist. What you call materialists today have no idea how to live even in the present moment peacefully and with lasting prosperity. In case you haven't noticed, the economic systems of human beings today are at war with their environmental systems. So they're destroying their own habitat. Sometimes some scientists are saying the only solution for the Earth planet and the human survival is that human beings should go off planet. They should all somehow or other be transported to another planet. That's the solution. And what do you think they'll do when they go to another planet? They'll trash that one too. So where are the real materialists? Those who know how to live in a way that they can enjoy the now. You don't have real materialists. You have decrepit, defunct, very distorted residents of Kali Yuga. Manda Subanda Matayo, Manda Bhagya Upaduta, the Bhagavatam, first canto says. Very slow about anything spiritual. Very unfortunate. And above all, the mind is always disturbed. That's what you get for living in a consumer society. What you derive for yourself is simply an agitated mind. So Krishna warned the cowherd boys, these brahmanas are not bhaktas. Therefore, because they're so materialistic, don't mention my name first. Mention Balaram's name. Because according to the Brahmana's material conception, I, Krishna, am the son of a Vaishya. Everyone knows I'm the son of Nanda Maharaj, a Vaishya. Whereas everyone knows Balaram is the son of Vasudeva, a Kshatriya. So you'll probably have better luck presenting to the Brahmanas the name of Balaram. In other words, these Brahmanas don't know anything about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the cowherd boys approached the Brahmanas and told them, Krishna and Balaram, they're nearby. We'd like to take some food from your yajna and bring it to them. And this is the right moment for doing this. We know a bit about yajna technicalities. And if you give us the food now, it's fine according to the Vedic procedures for yajnas. They made their presentation, their Sankirtan presentation, and they didn't even get an answer. The brahmanas wouldn't say yay or nay. They said nothing. The cowherd boys had paid their full dandavats. The acharyas described that even though they were laying on the ground in full dandavats before these brahmanas, the effulgence of the cowherd boys was so much more intense than the brahmanas. And the cowherd boys addressed the brahmanas with all respect. Hey, Bhumi Deva, oh earthly gods. In other words, you're brahmanas, you're supposed to have knowledge, you're supposed to represent the Supreme Personality of Godhead by teaching, by learning. Got no answer. Finally, as their last resort, the cowherd boys started getting a bit sarcastic. Oh, Dharma Vitama, oh knowers of Dharma. Yeah, right. The acharyas say they were, at that point, a little sarcastic. No answer. So the cowherd boys, disappointed, went back to report to Krishna. And they spoke very softly about the whole incident because they didn't want the minds of the other cowherd boys to become disturbed. Balaram already had heard he was angry. So the cowherd boys were speaking softly in Krishna's ear about their failure to get any food. And Krishna laughed. And hearing about the ignorant brahmanas, he laughed. And he told the cowherd boys, don't be disappointed. That's the way of begging. Sometimes you get, sometimes you don't get. Now we want to pause here and talk about something I was speaking on at the Gold Coast Little Center on Wednesday. The need for real brahmanas. I've explained quite often that one of the major problems of life today in Bharat is that this notion of brahmana by birth has destroyed any possibility of genuine spiritual instruction, education. The concept is so ridiculous. It's straight out of Kali Yuga. Just like if you need a heart operation, would you just search for someone whose father was a surgeon, a heart surgeon, and say, oh, the son must be qualified because the father is a qualified heart surgeon? You never do that. If you want some legal dealings for your property, you want to sell your house or make a property investment, do you go searching for a lawyer by asking, who has a father that's a lawyer? No way. You want to know what's the son's qualification? All glories to your father, but what about you? Where's your certificate? Where's your accreditation? So this notion of brahmana by birth has caused havoc in society, and you see the results today. People don't know what a brahmana is for. They have no idea what is a real brahmana. So one of our great objectives here is to establish real brahmanas, those who know what is Brahman. And the 6 activities of a real brahmana are: he or she studies the Vedic literature, teaches it to others, worships the deity and teaches others to worship the deity, and gives and receives charity. Those are the 6 core activities of a brahmana. In order to teach, you have to know yourself. So because of the presence of so many biological brahmanas. People think the whole system of transmission of Vedic knowledge is just a joke. You know that according to tradition, sometimes you need some brahmanas, and so you give them a few rupees, they give you some blessings, and you go, well, that's what my grandmother and grandfather did, so anyway, it's just a few rupees, so I'll perpetuate the tradition. How many of you, let's see who's honest, how many of you, when you were taking your exams in India, went and did puja for Saraswati? Raise your hands, yes. You figured, well, who knows, it might work, right? So what did you give the brahmanas, 100 rupees or something? You never know, could work out, maybe it'll have an effect. So that behavior is the remnant of a tradition in which people don't have any knowledge anymore. Why they're doing the tradition. People talk about Bhagavad Gita, but how many of you before coming to iskcon actually studied Bhagavad Gita? Most of the time it's just ritualistic, like one gentleman from Gujarat was telling me. Every week I touched Bhagavad Gita, inherited from my grandfather. It's on my bookshelf. Every week I touch it. And Swami, before I touch it, I do oxygen once a week. This is the extent of Brahmanism today. So we want to create an educated class. That means not material education. If you have that, that's okay. But it's just the shadow of the light. We want to create a class that has enlightenment, not endarkenment. And that way, the world can be benefited by such real brahmanas. And Krishna lists their qualifications in Bhagavad Gita. Shamodamastapa Socham, Chantir Arjavam Evacha, Jnanam Vijnana Astikyam, Brahmakarma Swabhavajam. Control of the mind, control of the senses, practicing austerity, honest, with both wisdom and the realization that comes by applying the wisdom. Religious in the sense of understanding what is dharma, not external religiosity. So where are those brahmanas? When I was speaking at the Gold Coast, at the little center there, I told them when I asked, where are the brahmanas? I said, don't just look at the other person. Look at yourself. You have that mandate. Just like politicians have a mandate, they say. The people have elected us. They've given us a mandate for our party platform. Well, if you look in the mirror and see a human body, you have a mandate. You must become Krishna conscious. So you want to see the world a better place? You want to see your own family a better place? You want to see yourself as a better place? Then become a real brahmana. Become educated in spiritual knowledge and let that spiritual knowledge radiate from your lifestyle. In this way, you'll see how to make a difference for yourself, for the others, and for the world. So these brahmanas that turned down the cowherd boys, they were the essence of everything you don't want to be. They were pukka in terms of their knowledge of Vedic intricacies, but they missed the point. They didn't understand the conclusion of the Vedas. So Krishna laughed when he heard the cowherd boys report. And then what did he tell them? Go seek out the wives of these brahmanas. They are my great devotees. But when you get there and meet them, don't tell them that Balaram and I are hungry. It'll be too painful for them. Just say that Krishna and Balaram are nearby. That's all you have to say. Tell them, I'm nearby. Sankarshan is nearby. Sankarshan's a more formal name for Balaram. So what happened? The cowherd boys found the wives of the brahmanas who were at home. They were, the Bhagavatam describes, they were nicely dressed with attractive ornaments, but most importantly, they were decorated with the ornaments of Krishna prema. How was that? They had heard about Krishna for a long time by meeting the ladies from Vrindavan. Even though the Brahmana's wives lived almost near Mathura, still sometimes they crossed paths with the gopi women of Vrindavan, with the betel nut sellers, with the flower sellers, and they heard about Krishna again and again. And just by hearing, they became totally absorbed in longing for Krishna's association. Shukadeva Goswami is talking with Pritchard Maharaj. Just see, we've been talking and hearing about Krishna for a long time. Have we attained that intensity that the wives of the Brahmanas have? So when the cowherd boys found them, the wives of the Brahmanas were sitting motionlessly, talking and hearing about Krishna. What does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Machatama gata prana bodhayanta pralasparam. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. They're always talking about me, deriving great satisfaction. Tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Deriving great satisfaction and happiness just by conversing about me. So these wives of the Brahmanas were showing the characteristics of real Brahmanas. They're always talking about Krishna. So the cowherd boys approached them very respectfully, because these are wives of Brahmanas. And the cowherd boys, they actually didn't follow Krishna's instructions completely. They were overwhelmed with the more intimacy of referencing Krishna and Balaram, especially because of the ladies' obvious love for Krishna. So they didn't say Sankarshan. They referred to Balaram as Rama, which is, as we explained before, more personal, more intimate. What did they say? The first thing, the cowherd boys? Krishna and Rama are nearby. Just by hearing that, what happened? The ladies fainted in ecstasy. So the cowherd boys had to think fast. How are we going to bring them out of their ecstatic trance? So they realized we have to say that Krishna and Balaram are hungry. So they went from Krishna and Balaram are nearby to Krishna and Balaram are nearby and they're hungry. So the ladies, the wives of the Brahmanas, hearing that, what am I doing in trance? What am I doing? Fainting. Wait, you fool, come out of this trance. Krishna and Balaram are hungry. Do something about it. Snap out of it. Come to your consciousness. They were deriding their own ecstatic trance. Just like you read in Nectar of Devotion about Krishna's chariot driver, Daruka, was fanning Krishna, and suddenly he became hit with waves of ecstasy, but he checked that ecstasy in order to go on with his service of fanning. This is especially so in Braj Leela, when everyone simply thinks of Krishna's pleasure, Krishna's well-being. So the wives of the brahmanas immediately came out of their trance. They entered into, just by hearing the names of Krishna and Balaram, and they began gathering foodstuffs to race out into the forest to find Krishna and present him with the foodstuffs. Yes, their husbands tried to stop them. Men don't like to be disrespected. They want to be the Ishwar, the controllers. But the husbands couldn't stop them. Their brothers, although having affection for their sisters, couldn't stop them. Their own sons, the sons of the wives of the Brahmins, couldn't stop them. In this way, they resembled the gopis who just heard the flute and dropped everything and raced out in the forest in the middle of the night. In the same way, these wives of the Brahmanas overturned all social formulas for the Maha social formula, pleasing Krishna. So they ran to the forest to find Krishna, and they saw him on the bank of the Yamuna. How did Krishna look? So exquisite in forest beauty, not Dwarka beauty, but Braj forest beauty. His face decorated with forest minerals and tilak, yellow cloth, lilies, one behind each ear, hair down over his cheeks, peacock feather in his hair. Smiling as they approached him. He had his left arm around a friend, a cowherd boy, and in his right hand he was twirling a lotus flower. What did that mean? You can just visualize now. The left arm around the cowherd boy, the right hand holding a lotus flower and twirling it. This has two meanings. Number one, he's telling the wives of the Brahmanas, your lotus hearts are in my hand now. Number two, by twirling the lotus flower, he's showing them, my heart is twirling for you. But an amazing thing happened. Krishna asked them to go back home. He asked the gopis to do that in the beginning of Rasa Leela, but they didn't. But he successfully had the wives of the Brahmanas go back home. He told them that perfection is not attained by being in my presence. Perfection is attained by hearing and chanting about me and worshiping the deity. Why did Krishna tell them this? And urge them to go back home? It's because he wanted them to deepen their prema to the point of experiencing love of Krishna in separation. He wanted the rasa to become more acute, more tasty. So therefore, go home, think about me at home. It seems like he's being cruel. And the Brahmana wives responded, practically saying the same words as the gopi said. Why are you being cruel? Why are you wanting to send us away after attracting us? Now there could be some possible dialogue going on, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out. Krishna could say, you should go home. You're wives of Brahmanas. I'm just a cowherd boy. It wouldn't look nice that a cowherd boy is associating with wives of Brahmanas. But the wives of the Brahmanas could reply, we've already demonstrated we're beyond all this casteism, all this Varna stuff. We are your surrendered souls. You already have demonstrated that. But Krishna could respond, my girlfriends are the gopis. They'll be angry at me if I'm associating with others. And what would be the response of the wives of the brahmanas? We don't have to go back to Vrindavan, to the town with you. Let us just remain in the forest, and we'll be satisfied by picking up the tulsi leaves that have fallen from you as you're dancing with your girlfriends. We'll be satisfied with that. And then finally they said, even if we wanted to go back, our husbands won't accept us back. And what was Krishna's response? Don't worry, I will arrange that they will fully accept you upon your return. Your husbands are absorbed in yagyas. That means they're able to attract the devatas, the demigods. I'll arrange that the devatas tell them to just chill. Just calm down, accept your wives back. So Krishna defeated all their reasons that they gave. The most prominent being that Krishna wanted them to taste deeper rasa, separation, which is the greatest mystery in bhakti, love of Krishna and separation. So they went home, and indeed, just as Krishna said, their family members easily accepted them back. Their going home had the great effect of doing something to their husbands. Their husbands, by the presence of the wives returning, the husbands realized, we have blown it. We don't know anything. So they began to condemn themselves. They began to lament. What's the use in our triple birth? Birth from Brahmana parents, Gayatri Mantra initiation, Vedic Yajna initiation. What's the use of all those three? We neglected to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These women, they never went to Gurukula and studied under the Guru. They never performed austerities. They never immersed themselves in Vedic knowledge. Yet, they are obviously our superiors. So the Brahmanas were lamenting, condemning themselves. They even came to the point of saying, these ladies are not our wives, they are our gurus. By their presence, we can see our great mistake. And they began to condemn their Vedic knowledge, their Brahmana birth. The hell with all that. We missed the conclusion of the Vedas. What's the use in all our punya, our pious activities? What's the use of all our Vedic technical knowledge of yajna when we don't understand who is Yajneshvara, who's the controller of all the yajnas? So the whole end of the chapter 23, I believe, of the 10th canto, is filled with the regrets of the Brahmana man. How could we have made such a mistake? They, to kind of not make themselves look so bad, they said, Krishna comes deceiving us as a human being. So, in other words, there was some reason for us to be bewildered. Krishna's bewildered us by his Nara Leela, by his human-like pastimes. But no, they couldn't recognize Krishna simply because of their own pride and lack of understanding. It's not that Krishna went out of his way to deceive them. They had deceived themselves with their arrogance, their Vedic arrogance. So they're appreciating our wives are superior to us. Let them instruct us. And they began to discuss, the Brahmana men, we should immediately go to Krishna and beg forgiveness. We should make that trip. We're living near Mathura. Krishna's in Vrindavan. We should make that trip and fall at his feet and beg forgiveness for our offense. We didn't recognize the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's acting like a human being. He's going around begging for food. In other words, you can understand why we made the mistake. I mean, Krishna was begging for food. I mean, who would think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead gets hungry and has to beg? You can understand, lighten up on us. Don't be so hard on us. It's obvious that by Krishna's behavior, we became bewildered. Anyone would be bewildered. They were making excuses for themselves. That's one thing brahmanas are good for. So they discussed amongst themselves, let's go beg forgiveness from Krishna. And this was during the daytime. There was not full agreement. There was discussion among them. But by the time evening came, the brahmanas had a unanimous opinion. Yes, we will all go and beg Krishna for forgiveness. Just like sometimes amongst the temple elders, there's some disagreement. Well, in the case of the brahmanas, there was disagreement. Not everyone felt that they should go and offer obeisances to Krishna. But by the evening, after a lot of discussion, they all agreed, let's do it. But they didn't. Someone pointed out, Kamsa has spies everywhere. If Kamsa sees that we're going to Krishna in Vrindavan, we could be killed. Now, their wives never thought about that. Their wives were simply focused on Krishna's pleasure. But the Vedic brahmanas, the menfolk, were about to dash off to find Krishna and beg forgiveness, but then they thought about what they thought was the real world. Just like sometimes our own devotees say like that. Well, I'm not chanting Hare Krishna, I'm just trying to deal with the real world. I have parents to take care of. I have property investments. I have a business that needs more of my attention now to get it off the ground. And then when I'm 75, that's the time for spiritual life. Besides, I've heard it said, this is not the spiritual age. This is the material age we're living in now. So you have to be material. You have to be in harmony with the age. What do you think of that one? It's Kali Yuga. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. When in Kali Yuga, do as Kali Yuga says. That is the Vedic system. So the Brahmana men never went. Although they lamented, they condemned themselves, they didn't take advantage of the opportunity to approach the goal of the Vedas. So we don't want you all to lament in that way. We don't want you all to condemn yourselves in that way. We want real brahmanas who understand the science of Krishna. More important than the puja, the rituals, more important than that is the knowledge. Understand the science of Krishna and teach it to others. That is Lord Chaitanya's order. Just like Krishna says, surrender to me, Lord Chaitanya says the same thing. He's Krishna saying the same thing. He says, wherever you go, whomever you meet, teach the science of Krishna. That's surrender to Krishna. But if you're going to teach and distribute the science of Krishna, you have to know about the science of Krishna. Otherwise, simply doing puja because this is what grandmother did, that means you'll remain a neophyte devotee, kanishta adhikari, also known as a prakrita bhakta, materialistic devotee, who does the pujas, does the rituals, does the bowing down, gives some Lakshmi to the temple, which does help, but doesn't understand the knowledge behind what he or she is doing. And that includes not knowing how to treat other devotees. This is third-class devotion. So unless there's a constant movement and effort in the temple community to bring devotees to the Madhyamadhikari platform, second-class devotee, there'll always be so much infighting and criticisms and this and that and the other because the devotees have not developed their spiritual intelligence. A real devotee is overwhelmed with the need to understand Krishna. And by being overwhelmed in that way, it leaves you very little time for criticizing, arguing. There will always be discussions about what is the best way to serve Krishna. But when your intelligence is properly spiritualized, you'll see those discussions, those debates even, for what they are. The whole point is how to serve Krishna better. And because the point is how to serve Krishna better, you're careful about your behavior in making your point. So this is why it's of utmost need that the temple community, any temple community, is elevated from third-class devotees to second-class devotees at least. Second-class devotees understand the science of Krishna and are compassionate upon those who don't know the science and teach them. They cultivate them. So we have a lot of work to do to create real brahmanas. Otherwise, what's afflicting the world, particularly India, is Brahmana-phoneism. And people think that's all there is. I was telling examples in the Gold Coast, how I was taking a motorized rickshaw in Delhi. And I've been going to India since 1977. So I'm over 100 visits to India in this lifetime. So I know that when you are about to take a rickshaw of whatever type, you settle the price before you go anywhere. So we fixed the price with the rickshaw wala, and then we got to our destination, Connaught Circle somewhere, and I got down and I gave him the money we agreed on. He looked at me in shock, and he said in his own language, he doubled the price that we agreed on. And so I just told him, no. And started to walk away. He tapped me on the shoulder and then reached under his very dirty t-shirt and pulled out a dirty thread and Brahmana. I just kept walking. But that's what goes on these days. Another example I gave in the Gold Coast was in New Zealand. Maybe Brajadam was around at that time, I believe. There was one young lady in her late 20s who was coming to our outreach center. And her parents were from India, but there was nothing Indian about her at all except her name. Totally devoid of any external cultural trappings or behaviors or cultural references, nothing. And she was associating with a young Indian man who was of the same type. Totally zero to do with anything from Bharat, except the name. You've met persons like that before? Yes, so. Anyway, it's so developed that while they were interacting, the girl became pregnant. And so, naturally, this caused a stir amongst their parents, the parents of both the girl and the boy. The couple had been dating for a while. Everyone knew that they were meant to be together in some kind of way, but I guess the couple kind of jumped the gun. And so everyone, their parents initially easily agreed they should marry, and quick, before the word gets out, before the belly starts to expand and everyone sees what's going on. They should marry very quickly. But an obstacle arose. What was that obstacle? The parents of the boy suddenly found out that they are a Brahmana family, and the girl's family is not a Brahmana family. They suddenly found that out. Oh, we just found out that we're a Brahmana family, and she's not from a Brahmana family. How can our boy marry her? So it was a real crisis. And of all persons, they called me to mediate. So I had the very blissful task of explaining to the boy's parents that real Brahmanas don't impregnate girls outside of marriage. And they were, oh, okay. I explained to them, your newfound Brahmana status means nothing. So let your son marry the girl and let's get on with life. You know? They made a mistake, but let's move ahead. So this is the problem. No one knows what a real Brahmana is. So it's up to you to demonstrate that. So this pastime with the wives of the Brahmanas, this pastime with the Brahmanas themselves, is very illustrative. It shows you very clearly that even though these Brahmanas were so expert in all the Vedic externalities and rituals, they missed the whole point of the Vedas. Whereas their wives, who never studied the Vedas, never practiced austerities, never went through the brahmacharya ashram, never went through Gurukula, they were madly in love with Krishna just by hearing about him. All right, any questions? Nothing. Yes.
On social media these days.
What a great beginning to a question. Has a car engine started? Yeah. You sure you want to go on?
On various issues, there just seems to be like this barrage of conflict and just kind of nasty behavior against devotees. Very offensive.
So your question is what? If you've got the time to waste and the consciousness to be polluted, go on listening, go on reading it. You got nothing better to do? I have never signed up for Facebook, and I don't think my life has suffered. You got to decide what you want to make of your consciousness. It's the nature of Kali Yuga that there's conflict, even amongst those trying to be devotees. Kali Yuga affects all social interactions. So you have to be decisive in your lifestyle about how you're going to take on information in a way that doesn't jeopardize your spiritual advancement. Why do we need to know about every controversy that goes on in every part of the world? Who is it? Dandakaranya at New Govardhan was showing me, actually, an example recorded in one book of Prabhupada memories, where a devotee was in the kitchen doing what Prabhupada called talking shop talk. I mean, did you hear what this devotee did? And what about that devotee? This leader, that leader. And Prabhupada overheard it and asked very sternly for that devotee to come see him. And Prabhupada told him, why are you talking like this? This kind of talk will destroy the society of devotees. Life was fine in iskcon without social media. You may wonder, how do we exist? When I moved into the ashram in early 1973, we didn't even use the telephone. It was too expensive to make a call to another city. Then a great revolution happened. In 1978, I don't think any of you, except the older persons here, remember telex machines? Telex machines, that new innovation came. And so some devotees were saying that every temple should have one. And Prabhupada said, you do that and they'll just gossip. That was the telex machine. Then came the fax machines, then the mobile phones, then the social media. So you have to decide how to position your spiritual life. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean you have to get into it. Most of our devotees are hard-pressed, they say, to find time to chant their rounds. But there's time for social media, right? They don't have time for reading the books, but there's time for social media. So you have to decide what quality of spiritual life you want. Anything else? Yeah?
How do you feel when Maharaj said, to spread the science of Krishna consciousness, that's what we are here for? But how do you feel with people who are not open to it, with no family members?
You have to be patient and tolerant. You have to see where they're at and don't overdose them with your enthusiasm. Be respectful, they're your family members, but you have to be tactful, diplomatic. I often say my mother doesn't understand at all what I'm doing after 50 years. A few years ago, she told me that, I never told you this, but when your grandmother left this world, she left a special fund for you for when you come home. Think about it. The money is there for when you come home and live a normal life. So at the time, I was 65. And so I told her, what am I going to do with the money? Just buy a house, get a TV, and watch Netflix all day long? What am I supposed to do? I said, I'm half dead already. I'm 65. Oh, don't say like that. And now she's 94. So I said, what am I going to do? I get the money, I buy a house, I sit in the house and watch Netflix. She said, oh, but there's more. I know, she said, some nice ladies at the church. And they're on their knees praying to God for you. I said, that's wonderful. Tell them, keep staying on their knees. Keep praying. It's not going to happen. But 50 years ago, when I became a devotee, she was saying, why are you doing what all those Indian people do? They're just starving in India. Now, 50 years later, they're still associated with all those Indians. They're smart people. They take all the good jobs. So she's upgraded. So she doesn't understand. Every phone call she says to me, when are you coming back to Jesus? I said, well, maybe I'm already there, following Jesus' instructions. No, the Bible says one way, and one way only. So I know better than to talk about certain things with her. I changed the subject. But she, as you may have heard before, she did confide in me a few years ago. She said, do you know what I was thinking? You're my first child. Do you know what I was thinking while you were being conceived? I said, no. She said, I was praying to God to send me a servant of the Lord. I said, well, maybe, slightly, possibly, your prayers could have been a little bit fulfilled. She said, yes, but I meant for Jesus, not Krishna. So I told her, next time be more specific. So I have to be very patient and tolerant. In the days when everyone would use checks to send money, she would send me checks, and she'd write on the bottom of the check, not for Krishna. And then she would ask me, I sent you the check, it says not for Krishna. Did you spend it on Krishna? I said, no, I gave it to Govinda. Okay, doesn't matter as long as it's not Krishna. So, one has to be tactful. Last question. Yes.
Actually, you share a story about Prabhupada when he overheard devotees in the kitchen talking about some bad things about other devotees. I understand it's like backstabbing, which is not good, but I was wondering, we more appropriate that those devotees come together and share their views about each other. Because what do you say about that? Is it appropriate and good to share?
Somehow or other, we have to work together for Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission. Somehow or other. Even older devotees have disagreements, but they just learn how to, if they're progressive devotees, concerned with spiritual advancement, they learn how to disagree with finesse and respect and not capsize the whole ship with their disagreements. Okay? All right.